Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Go Fast, Grow Fast. Today, I am joined by Ryan, who founded a RevOps agency. So this is going to be a great dive into the tooling and process and data foundations for us to actually make good marketing decisions. I'm really excited about this conversation. Ryan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sean. Excited to be here.
Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about what your background is, how you found your way to where you're at now.
Yeah, great. So I currently am the founder CEO of Floodlight Growth. Like you mentioned, we are a RevOps agency, and really, I would say this is a culmination of things that have been a foundation throughout my career. So super early career was in finance, and after an MBA, made the move into software and started working in product analytics, understanding product usage. And that kind of scaled with that company, a company called VictorOps, from let's understand the product to let's understand everything that's happening in the business. And a lot of that focus was on marketing because we have a lot of data within marketing. And when we had a marketing leader departure and the CEO there at VictorOps said, you know more about marketing than anyone else. So took over the team on an interim basis, which became a permanent basis eventually, and led that team up through our acquisition by Splunk. Then went on, led another marketing team at a growing B2B SaaS company. And after that, had the opportunity to be a co-founder, was co-founder and COO, which really, I ran all of the back office side of things, but really where I spent the majority of my time was building out the go-to-market engine for Stackhawk. So was one of three co-founders, and it was great to be able to build that company from zero, from an idea, build a brand, build an acquisition channel that's bringing customers in. We had a very, very much a product-led growth sort of approach where we were bringing people in, leading with the product. It was a application security tool, or is an application security tool that is focused on developers. And so really focusing on that developer experience and how we can get people onto the site, signing up for the product, testing it out, and then moving from there into a sales process where we're engaging broader in the organization and selling into the broader engineering team, the security team, and ultimately landing a footprint within the company.
That's awesome. And that's Stackhawk went through multiple rounds of fundraising, right? You were there from like the beginning till what, like Series A or B?
Yeah, I was there well beyond Series B. So we raised Series B in May of 2022, and I left about a year ago in April of 2023. So, got the company up and running, got the leaders in place, and it was the right time for me to step away and start Floodlight, which is, like I said, it's a passion area of mine and really a culmination of a lot of these experiences. The thing that I love working on is understanding, putting the instrumentation in place to capture the data and understand what is happening in the business, and therefore what it informs about what we should go do next to continue to grow. So really took a lot of that and moved from the world I've always lived in of being in leadership roles at venture-backed B2B SaaS to becoming a service provider to other B2B SaaS companies, early and growth stage companies, and helping them put these foundations in place, capture the data, build out marketing playbooks, sales pipelines, making sure that we're automating everything that we can and running really efficiently, and capturing that data to understand what needs to happen to go drive further growth.
Right. And that's, so first, that that journey at Stackhawk, that sounds like a fun, wild ride to be on, because moving across those stages of a company, I mean, those are massively different from pre-seed to post Series B. That company looks very different.
Yes.
And then moving from that venture back, product-led growth to an agency model where you, like you said, you're a service provider. Getting clients is very different. You're not marketing a piece of software. So what's been the biggest kind of shock to the system and the difference between those two?
Yeah. In terms of customer acquisition, it is, I would say, the biggest thing. It's a lot of the same underlying principles, and it's just the method by which you go about it. As an agency, we support, our client list is very small relative to the number of customers that we're supporting at Stackhawk, because it's a product and everyone goes onto the product. With the services-based model, it's much more one-on-one. Things are a lot more custom. There's a time component with each and every customer. And with a venture-backed model versus a bootstrapped model, you also have a lot more money to pour into marketing early on. That is that we just can't afford to do at Floodlight. And so it becomes different models, but the underlying foundation of speaking to people's pains and solving problems, that has been consistent in really throughout from a marketing perspective, throughout every company that I've worked with. So the mechanisms by which we leverage that to bring customers in the door look very different at Stackhawk versus Floodlight. But right now with Floodlight, a lot of it is focusing on leading with value and information, jumping into conversations. I do a lot in various communities where I'll jump into conversations about how to solve problems and how to approach things like attribution, what data should we be tracking. And I have those conversations, and often enough, they turn into hey, can you help us out with that? Because what you're talking about sounds great, and we don't have the resources internally to do that ourselves. And so that's more of the mechanism here, and it's working really well.
I'll have to go back and watch through the episodes to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that every episode we've recorded of this series so far, the topic has come up of know your audience and provide value first. That's like the foundations of literally anything that you want to do with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can, in a certain sense, prove your value before somebody has to sign a contract, put money on the table, they know what they're getting into, and then that trust is developed through that process, and it's a lot easier to bring on a service provider or bring on a product if you demonstrate that trust early on.
Yeah, and it strikes me that a lot of marketing is figuring out how to do that at a certain scale and figuring out systems to ensure that's happening.
Yeah, so absolutely.
One we a big part of this series is digging into, with your experience and your specialties, what are you seeing working out there? What's working for you, for the companies you work with, for Stackhawk? What do you see working now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start by laying a foundation, because this is a huge passion area of mine. I think that there are certainly macro trends of what things that are and are not working. But I would say there's this foundational layer that's needed this is certainly a bit self promotion here, but it's not just my agency. Across the board, I'm a big believer in RevOps and putting the foundations in place to track and understand for your particular business what is working. because you can hop on LinkedIn, read blog posts, listen to podcasts. It's easy to find ideas. The execution of those ideas is a hard part. And then understanding if that idea is the right mechanism for your business, for your audience. Is it working for you? And then running that feedback loop. If it is, great, how do we optimize it? If it's not, then typically I always think through it through this lens of the scientific method. You have a hypothesis. We think this will work for our audience. You go run the experiment and then look at the data. And if it's not working, then you have this question of, is it because we didn't nail the execution? Or is it because the channel or the message or the mechanism by which we're doing this just was a little bit off? And so if you run that scientific method process, it ultimately leads to you identifying the levers for growth that will work for your business. So I like putting that foundation in place. And ultimately, what I see as these fundamentals that every company needs to be tracking is how leads and deals are moving through the pipeline. And you need to be able to look at closed won customers and understand what brought them in the door and what led them through that process to become a customer of yours so that you can go do a lot more. So that looks like understanding the marketing channel that brought them in, the marketing interactions and touch points that helped get them across the line, and then how they move through the sales process and making sure that you're tracking all of that information along the way.
Right. Can you maybe outline for people, because there's, in our audience, there's different levels of familiarity with, what really is entailed in RevOps. Some people in the audience, they do RevOps. They know all about. Some people have heard the term, and that's about the extent of it. So can you maybe outline what are like the 3 levels of sophistication in terms of revenue operations? From someone who's just kind of starting out, they're getting the basics in place, up to, someone who really has it dialed in.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say the basics look like putting a CRM, probably a marketing automation tool, in place. My go-to is always HubSpot. I point customers to HubSpot when they're asking me. I love working with HubSpot, but putting that instrumentation in place and that tooling in place so that at the most basic level, you are capturing who your leads are, what sales deals you have, and starting to build some internal rigor of what are different lead stages that people are moving through, and then what are different deal stages that once you have somebody who represents a potential buyer, you're tracking what stages they move through. So that might be, typically it would be something like discovery, where we're learning more about the potential customer. I often will think of this as a stage 0 opportunity, or some companies call it stage 1 opportunity. And then you move to a qualified opportunity where we've identified there is an opportunity for business here. And whether you're using something like BANT or MEDIC, whatever your criteria of determining a qualified opportunity is, you've met that criteria. Now it's a qualified opportunity. Then often you're moving into some sort of demo or evaluation process where the customer is evaluating, again, I work a lot with B2B software. So they're evaluating the software to determine if it will meet their needs, if it will solve their problems, often in a competitive environment against other software solutions. And then once there's a technical win or a product win, then we move into a commercial negotiation stage, and then moving into closed won. And if you can identify how deals are moving through the pipeline, that is information for what's happening right now. Hey, I want to look at what our pipeline looks like broken down by stage and understand of the deals, where do they sit? You can look historically at these conversion rates and understand, are we losing people at the product phase, or are we losing people at the commercial phase where we get the product win, but something about the commercial or legal aspect, we're not able to close these deals, can understand how deals move through. So that's like the foundational element.
Right.
Level two, you said 3 different levels of maturity. I would say the next level really gets into tracking a lot more data and leveraging some of that data for automation. So this is moving from a world where it's a lot of sales input from your reps to now what can we have systems track and what can we automatically update, and making sure that that's in place. And a lot of this goes farther upstream in terms of tracking attribution data around your leads and capturing the marketing channels that they're coming from, the conversion point, or I always think of it as the lead source. What did they convert on? What touch points do they have in their journey? What's leading them to convert into a sales deal? Tracking the sales interactions before they've become a deal. How are we reaching out, and how effective are we at converting those leads into opportunities? And then the third level is really starting to, I would say there's 2 big opportunities here. One is getting more and more segmented with your leads and how you're marketing to them, because we have all of this data. So can we build more targeted lists? Can we really personalize a lot of the information that we're exchanging with these potential customers in order to increase those conversion rates? And then the second thing at this mature level is really looping this back into strategic planning for how we're going to go hit the growth goals for the business.
Going to something that you said there, as you're getting more advanced, you need more data, you're collecting more data, and a big part of that data is things like attribution. Obviously I've worked with a lot of businesses over the years, and they want, you talk about attribution and they're excited, right? Yeah, they want to know, where did these people come from? Obviously, I want to know if my marketing dollars are spent well. But I think the industry maybe presents it as more of a science than it is sometimes. I'm wondering if you have perspectives on that. You think, how much time are you spending thinking about attribution? How much are you investing in that? What kind of tools are you using? What are your thoughts on that whole thing? Does it lead people astray, or is it still valuable?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss. I love what you said there, that it seems like people think it is much more of a scientific undertaking and technical undertaking than it is. I spend a lot of time thinking about attribution and working with customers on this. And there are certainly ways that I have built things that are much more bespoke and sophisticated. But I would say the vast majority of my time is spent on how do we use the data that is automatically captured by HubSpot or a similar tool. How do we make sure that we're making sense of that in a way that we therefore can inform decision making? So I would say there's a couple of principles that I always work with when I start to approach these conversations. One is the notion of making sure that you're using your data rather than any third-party ad provider data. So the way that I like to think of this is you can be advertising on Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they have their own reporting about how many conversions, certainly upstream things like impressions, they capture clicks, they report on conversions. But at that point of a click, you should on your side be able to see, okay, now I have a page view here, and you should have the information around conversions. And I find that to be much more reliable. And you also can connect the data all the way downstream through to closed won revenue. And the problem is ad providers all want to demonstrate their value. And so I always think of them as a little bit greedy in terms of counting the conversions. So you can imagine a world where you see an ad on LinkedIn and you go through and convert on, the company's, you sign up for a free trial of the company. But maybe the reason you saw that LinkedIn ad is because you had already been on the website, you're being retargeted, and it was a different channel that brought you in. And if you're using your own data, then you're able to see what's really bringing people in the door, what first brought them to the site, what interactions did they have before they converted, what happened after they converted. And you can also connect this downstream to revenue. I'm sure that, most of us have been a part of some Google Ads campaign that the targeting gets off and you get a lot of signups, but it's totally the wrong persona, totally the wrong targeting. And if you're just looking at a conversion number, then it's off. You need to be able to connect it all the way through the funnel to what's actually driving revenue for the business.
Right. Yeah, no. And it's, the nice take is, Google and them, they're optimistic about their conversion numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, when it comes to attribution, there certainly are these very sophisticated things that you can do. But I have found, maybe it's this good is the enemy of great sort of mindset. But I have found so many businesses that really don't even understand what's happening in their funnel. And they're comparing not understanding to super complex multi-touch attribution sort of modeling. And I think that if you get some of the fundamentals in place, that is such a tremendous value add to every business that I've worked with, to be able to understand, okay, what's bringing people in the door in the first place? A lot of early and growth stage companies, that first touch attribution is the number one thing to look at, because we're not talking about an Airbnb that has wide brand awareness. Companies like that, their objective is to get your next booking, your next purchase. But for an early stage company, growth stage company, they want to hit your radar and show they can solve your pain, which a lot of that is first touch attribution. And we'll see somebody's on the site and within a week, 2 weeks, they've signed up for a trial, they've requested a demo. And so really focusing on that first touch attribution can be such a value add for so many businesses.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's great. And I know you focus a lot on, B2B SaaS and those early stage ventures, but I talk to a lot of mid-sized businesses even where, you're talking, 50 million in revenue, and they have a lot of the basics in place, a lot of the sales stuff like you've talked about, but a lot of them are still missing that connection between what happens in the marketing to what happens on the sales side. And it's still something that I'd say the vast majority of businesses I've talked to are still catching up on.
Yeah, absolutely. I have had conversations with companies that spend an astronomical amount of money on marketing, on their various marketing channels, without an understanding of what is working downstream. There's the old adage that we've all heard of 50% of the marketing budget is working. I just don't know which 50%. And we live in a world where you can never get 100% accuracy, but we have the tooling to be able to get a heck of a lot closer and have a really good perspective on what is and isn't working.
Yeah. And I think to touch on something you mentioned, which, use your own data, verify all that. Well, part of what this leads into, especially in enterprise SaaS, but in smaller companies too, is ABM, right? Everybody wants ABM, and they want to say, where's my silver bullet of third-party data that tells me this is the person I should spend my money on, and if I just spend it on them, it's going to be 100% conversion rate, and we're gonna see a massive increase. So, how much are you dealing with ABM in what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm opinionated here, and it may differ from what a lot of folks out there think, but I believe in the principles of ABM. If we're talking find people at the point where they are interested, there's this notion of intent. They're on the market for a product, 100%. That is the place to be. If we're talking about targeting the right personas and having coverage within an account so that it's not just one person, but you're building brand awareness among the various people who would be involved and influencing a buying decision, 100%. These are principles that I think we can call foundational aspects of marketing.
Right.
I think we've gone wrong as an industry with some of the ABM tooling that is out there, where it's these products often with, price tags that start at 6 figures a year, that they sell this vision that you were just talking about. You're finding only the people who are ready to buy and marketing to them. And what I have seen personally in my experience purchasing these tools in-house and with folks in my network, companies I've helped out with, I have not seen a single one that really has delivered on that promise. Mm-hmm. And when it really comes down to, I think that there's a lot when you look at the data where there's missing attribution information for the companies who do believe it's working. Can you really point to the fact that without this ABM platform in place, you would not have received this lead, this sale? And there was actually just a MIT study, I think it was late 2023, that came out that looked at this third-party intent data versus just random targeting, and showed that no measurable increase from the companies that were using third-party intent data from just what we might think of as old school, just good marketing principles targeting. And so, I think that I'm again a huge believer in the principles, and when it comes to the third-party intent data vendors, I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, no, I think that's a brave take, because there is so much money being spent on it. But I would echo this. It also comes down to, all right, like you said, a lot of these platforms, they're starting in the 6-figure range, and the question is, are they adding 6 figures in value? It's a simple equation. Like, if you're going to spend that much money, it should be a pretty clear return. Like, you should see a pretty big difference. That's a huge chunk of change, even for these large companies with large budgets.
Yeah, I think there's this important principle to understand of a marketing touch point versus an incremental lift. So one of the challenges, if you're a marketing leader in today's heavily digital world, is if you're investing in an ABM platform, it's not difficult for that ABM platform to capture a digital touch point that they can track to, that they can point to, and they say, hey, we influenced this sale. But the question that we all need to be asking ourselves is, would this sale have happened if that touch point was not there? So you can imagine a world where you're marketing into maybe you're selling to financial institutions, you're marketing to those financial institutions, and you're closing at a certain rate. What we need to see if we bring a ABM platform on is it's moving us from X% to Y%, and that incremental lift is justifying the ROI. Not just that we can track that, hey, we served an ad to everyone here, because that's not hard to do.
Right. And that's, I think, to keep getting concrete, it's a lot of companies I've worked with, they love G2 data, right? Big software review company, and saying, oh, I want to target the people who have looked at X category of software. And it's like that, foundationally, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like that's an easy sell. It's like, this person's looking at reviews for the type of software that you offer. Obviously, you'd want to target them. But the question is, did you already touch that prospect with your search ad, or with your content marketing, or with this, or this? It's really hard to see that. And so that's where I think a lot of people kind of lose out, and you're not actually moving the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. If they are already aware, if you're already in their consideration set, and they're going to come reach out to your company, and they are looking at G2 to just get a perspective of your company as well as competitors, but you are already going to be on their consideration set, then you could argue that ABM sort of approach of that targeting based on intent data is wasted spend, because they already would be talking to your sales rep anyways.
So, the next question that stems from this is, when do you plan to found a new company to fix this for us?
Yeah, well, listen, this is part of what I'm doing here, and it's I don't know that there's a clear productized version. Let me say this differently. I think there is a clear productized version that at least gets you a lot of the way there. And HubSpot's my go-to. And one of the big reasons that it's my go-to is that they are the best at tracking digital touch points, and they have a data model that does a really good job with that. And you can get a lot more sophisticated. I think the challenge is that the data is there to answer so many of these questions for the companies that are out there. The challenge is making sense of it. And so it's, at least for now, it's a service rather than a product that helps answer the questions for these companies.
Right. No, that's great. And I have to also just say for the record that you are the second HubSpot fanboy that has been on this series. The very first episode we put out, his whole company is on syncing data with HubSpot, and he's the biggest HubSpot fanboy. So this is apparently going to be an ongoing theme of this series of people who love HubSpot.
Yeah, it's a great product, and I did listen to that episode, and couldn't agree more with just all of the perspectives. It's the best product out there in my mind.
Yeah. It makes the choice a lot easier, because there's a million CRMs out there nowadays, because it's so easy to build up a interface for what is essentially a table of data. And they're highly undifferentiated, but HubSpot has built such an incredible ecosystem around everything they do. That's where that value is.
Yeah. And the other thing with HubSpot that I really appreciate is like making it easy to do the things that should be done anyways. So a lot of the ways that the default out of the box things that they do for a seller that has their Gmail hooked up to HubSpot is such a lift over so many of the other CRM platforms out there. It just works out of the box, which is really nice.
It is. It's very nice. Well, we're getting towards the end here. And one thing that I always have to ask is, how is AI impacting your day-to-day? Are you using it personally? Is it being built into the products you're using? How are you thinking about AI? How much time are you spending on it?
Yeah, I would say there is one particular area for me that has made where AI has made a really big impact. We inevitably get into the technical weeds of the data pipelines, JavaScript tracking, and run into scenarios that as a data person and as a marketer and a more technical marketer, I can get quite a ways, but there's things that get into engineering details that I am just not familiar with. And what I have seen is that ChatGPT can take these things that would be a 1-day investigation, full 8-hour day, if not more, of trying to figure out what's going on and troubleshoot a technical scenario. And it's compressed it into a 10, 15-minute conversation where sometimes it's ChatGPT updating or writing new code to be able to solve a problem that's where the massive time savings has been with everything that we're doing.
That's great. That's a really good use case for sure. Understanding, getting into the spaghetti code and quickly being able to understand what it's doing. It's definitely
Absolutely.
a superpower.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I like to close out always with, do you have any recommendations for the audience? Books, podcasts, your favorite computer monitor, anything at all that comes to mind that you've really been enjoying lately?
Yeah. So I go through these phases where I will binge a bunch of content and then I go into modes of like go execute. And so a lot of the recommendation stuff, the things you would typically hear on a question like this, I am heads down in building the business and operating the business mode. And so really not consuming a lot of the content that I probably should and that I really enjoy doing. So a lot of what I am spending my time on is building the business. And then outside of that, I've got 2 recommendations. One is, I've been doing a lot of pizza with my wife, making pizza at home. We got at-home pizza ovens. So the Gosney Rockbox pizza oven is something that we've been doing a lot of. Huge fan of making pizzas at home. So that's a recommendation, something that's delicious, super fun to do. And then my other recommendation is I used to skateboard as a kid, and I'm an old man now, and it's a little bit more painful when you take a fall, that sort of thing. And so I recently got a Carver skateboard. I've had that for a little over a year now, and it's super fun to just cruise around on. Not in the skate park, but just skating around the streets. And my kids are at the age where they're starting to do it, and so I'm having a ton of fun doing that as well.
That's great. I love that. Those are both great recommendations. That's really good. And I also want to just highlight for people, I think your comment on, you kind of have these different modes, right? Where you're consuming a ton of information and researching deeply, and then you're going into a mode of executing. I've had conversations with a lot of people over the years trying to normalize that. Like, that's a normal thing to do, but a lot of people don't actually talk about that. And they get this sense of guilt while they're, in heavy operating mode, feeling like I'm missing out on everything. It's like, you know what? All that stuff is still going to be there in 3 months or 6 months or however long your cycle lasts. You can catch up. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. I have a note written to myself here that lists out my priorities for life right now, which is all around making sure that customers are, getting the best experience that they can. How do I grow and scale this business? And there's a part here that says what's not important right now. And learning new things is not a priority for me right now. I have that written out as well. And, that mode will switch before too long, but it is it's a very intentional decision to go focus my effort on something different right now.
That's amazing. We all have the same number of hours in the day. It's just about how you use it and how focused are you. That's a great thing. I need to go get some sticky notes. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. You've been an amazing guest, and I feel so lucky that we got to record this conversation. I can't wait to share it with everyone.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.